Welcome to Travel with Tulsans, presented by the Friends of the Tulsa City County Library. My name is Doris Degner Foster, and we are so glad to have you join us for this fifth of our 2023 Travels with Tulsans presentation. If you would like more information about becoming a friend of the Tulsa City County Library, please ask one of us with the volunteer tag or pick up one of the membership forms on the counter over there. Be sure to be with us next week when Anitra Levanhar will be taking us on her Camino de Santiago pilgrimage in pictures. Our traveler today, sharing the land of the rising sun, days in Japan, is Farrar. Tara has worked on nonprofits for nearly 20 years and joined CCCL in 2016 as the support liaison to the Friends of the Library. She's done a little bit of everything, but her oddest job was working as a page on the Dr. Phil show. When she's not at work, you might find her perusing antique stores, watching films, or enjoying a road trip to an interesting destination. Please join me in welcoming Farrar.
Thank you so much. I'm usually at the back of the room, you guys probably know, so it's fun to be up here today and talking to you all about my recent trip that I took to Japan. Let me see if I can get rid of this message. All right, so many of you may be aware that since the onset of the pandemic, that Japan has largely been closed to visitors. They last summer let up their restrictions a little bit and were allowing organized tour groups in and also family of military members, which is how I ended up booking a trip. My sister and brother-in-law and their family have been living in Japan since January of 2020. Really bad timing. And so they had not had anyone be able to come and visit them. So I was happy to schedule a trip and start the very long tourist visa process. And then all of a sudden in October, they said, okay, US tourists and a few other countries, you don't need a visa, you don't need COVID testing, you do have to be vaccinated with at least 3 shots to enter the country, but that made coming in and out of Japan a lot easier for me. So Japan's economy is in really bad shape right now from being closed. So they want as many tourists to come back as possible. So it is a really good time to travel in Japan. The value of the yen as well has gone down quite a bit. When I was there, I think it was about 74 yen on the dollar. So that makes it a lot less expensive to travel around Japan right now. So Japan is an archipelago. It has 4 main islands. Those are labeled on the map there in the white. Honshu is the main island, and many people who go to Japan are only visiting Honshu. And then I have an inset here, the kind of a sample itinerary. This is not my exact itinerary because I had the unusual circumstance of having a home base of Yokosuka Naval Station, which I actually put a little red arrow there where you can see where that is just south of Tokyo. So we kind of use that as a home base to take several day trips. Right. So this was actually my second time in Japan. The first time was in 1996. I went to Choshi, Japan, which is the sister city of my hometown of Kusei, Oregon. And I went with a group from my high school on a short exchange. And so it was nice to finally make it back there. So the first day trip that we took was to Mount Fuji at Hakone. Hakone is a really picturesque mountain town near Mount Fuji. Lots of winding roads and streams, just really beautiful town. And the first stop we made there was to the Hakone open air museum, which is something you might not expect to see in this little mountain town, but it is actually one of the largest sculpture park collections in the world. Just you can see really beautiful grounds, lots of great sculptures. Some people you've probably heard of. Miro, Leger. You can see me there. You can see the scale of that piece there. And of course, you see here the Picasso exhibit. They have actually one of the largest Picasso collections in the world. We couldn't take pictures inside, but if you were a museum person, I would put this way up there. I thought it was well worth a visit, especially because it's probably not the first thing you think of when you think of it. From there, we went to Iwako-dani, which means the boiling valley, and this is part of the volcanic area around Mount Fuji. To get there, we took the ropeway up, and the reason to take the ropeway is you get to take in the gorgeous views of Mount Fuji ascend. We had a nice clear day that day. Sometimes you can't see Mount Fuji, but we could see it pretty well that day. And you get to the top, and the landscape is kind of reminiscent of like Yellowstone. It smells very strongly of sulfur, but you get more gorgeous views of Mount Fuji. What this area is really known for, though, are its black eggs. And what these are eggs that they have boiled in the sulfur baths, and it turns the shells black. And you can buy them in these packs of 5 at this little kiosk that's outside the gift shop. They make them fresh every day. And eating one is supposed to add 7 years to your life. I had 2, so I feel pretty good about that. So from there, we went to Hakone Shrine, which sits along Lake Ashi. This picture here of the lake is actually about 4:30 p.m. So that is one thing about traveling in the winter. It did get dark quite early, so we lost a little bit of our sightseeing time. But this is one of the most popular torii in Japan to photograph. Even when we got there at dark, there was a really long line of people waiting to take their picture in front of it. Got a picture there of my sister on another visit during the day where you can really see the scale of it. And you can get some really neat pictures that look like you're walking straight out onto the water. So a torii is meant to serve as a marker between like the spiritual or sacred world and the mundane. So you'll find them at the entrances to shrines. And shrines are associated with Shinto, and temples are associated with Buddhism. These are the 2 main religions in Japan. Shinto is the ancient religion of Japan. It involves a veneration of nature. Buddhism was introduced later, but both of them really are ingrained in the culture of Japan. So you might find a lot of people who, if you ask them, would say that observing Shinto and Buddhism is almost more like a cultural practice than even a religious one. So speaking of Buddhism, our next day trip was to Kamakura, home of the great Buddha. Kamakura has a great little shopping district that's really popular. You can see young ladies here out in their kimono having girls' day out. You saw a lot of that, especially young people, young couples out dressed up to go out on the town. And of course, had to get a little okay. Some of the shops we stopped at, this senbei shop. Senbei are rice crackers. This gentleman here is making them fresh, which I had not had before, and it is amazing. Definitely, if you see one of those, stop and get one. And then the mochi shop here. Mochi is a pounded rice treat. Here in the States now, you can get mochi ice cream pretty much everywhere. Then we stopped for lunch at Caraway Cafe, which you can probably tell from the line is a quite popular curry restaurant in Kamakura. And it's just tucked down this little alleyway. And we had some Japanese curry, which I love. This one was a little bit spicier than other ones that I've had before, but really good. And this whole tray of food cost about $6. It's a good deal. If you're wondering what that green drink is up there, that is melon soda. Melon is a really popular flavor in Japan, and you'll find melon soda at just about every restaurant in Japan. So Kamakura has a really pretty shrine complex that's dedicated to the deity Hachiman. So we walked around there a little bit. You can see there's a lot of people out, lots of school groups there in the white hats. Tourists are welcome, visitors are welcome at these places. The thing to keep in mind is just that these are sacred sites. So you're not supposed to take pictures of the priests and attendants, religious ceremonies. Of course, you want to be respectful and stay out of the way of people who are there giving prayers. And it's like a lot of places that you travel, pay attention to what other people are doing and not doing, and you'll probably be okay. Next stop was the Kamakura Buddha, or the Great Buddha. The Great Buddha was erected in 1252 AD. For a long time, I think it was the largest cast Buddha statue in Japan. I think it ranks like number 2 now, but a really popular photo op spot. Also, a pretty quick day trip from Tokyo. I wanted to talk a little bit about the difference between shrines and temples. So you can see here, there's no torii. Instead, you have the temple gate, and then you have the 2 Neo here, temple guardians, on either side of the gate there. All right, our next trip was to Hiroshima. We took a weekend to go while my nieces were out of school and took a trip to Hiroshima. It is fairly long distance. Maybe you saw on the map that I had up at the start. It's quite far from some of the other sites. A lot of people only make it as far as Kyoto. If they're traveling on a shorter visit, it takes about 2 days to add on Hiroshima to a trip. We decided instead of spending time in Kyoto, we would go to Hiroshima. And that is largely because my family was really wanting to make sure they went there before they left Japan. They actually came back just after January. So they're back in the States now. But so to get to Hiroshima, the fastest way is probably by plane. But the other fastest way is by the bullet train, the Shinkansen. So this was everyone's first time on the bullet train. These, I believe, are no longer the fastest trains. I think China has the fastest trains right now, but of course the bullet train is the OG high-speed train. If you are a foreign tourist, you can get a JR pass, which is like a Euro pass if you're planning to primarily travel by train, which most people do usually travel by train when they're in Japan because there is such an expansive and reliable train network in Japan. Since this was kind of our only train trip, I did not get a JR pass. Local trains are pretty inexpensive, but the bullet train is quite expensive. So the JR pass can be a good way to save money and get a pretty good discount on using the bullet train. And then here I am walking to our hotel in Hiroshima from the train station. It takes about 5 hours on the bullet train to get to Hiroshima from the Tokyo area. So I want to talk a little bit about lodging in Japan and what you'll see described there as either Western style or Japanese. So the picture at the bottom there that looks like a regular old hotel room that you might see, that was actually our hotel room at our boutique hotel in Hiroshima. That's what would be considered a Western style room. And then if you were to stay at a traditional ryokan or Japanese inn, you might have a room that looks like this with a tatami mat, a low table, futons on the ground to sleep on. And then you might have a private bath, or there might be a communal onsen or a hot spring bath, which are really popular around Japan with natural hot spring water that they pipe in. You probably want to know if you're making accommodations, which you're booking, depending on how comfortable you are being naked with strangers. So then up in the corner is what the bathrooms look like in our room. And this is a typical Japanese wet room. So you can see there the faucet controls are down low there with all the toiletries. And then the white thing in the corner there is a stool. So you would sit on the stool to bathe and use either a shower wand like what's there, or you might just have a bucket, rinse off. The baths are only for soaking. They're not for cleaning yourself. So that's kind of interesting. And then the sink and toilet will be in a completely separate area. All right, you can't go to Hiroshima and not have the Hiroshima style okonomiyaki. Okonomiyaki is a Japanese cabbage pancake. And this is a different style than what I've had before in Hiroshima. There's just a very thin layer of batter there at the bottom, and then they layer all the ingredients on, including the cabbage. And then they add noodles, which is not on the other style of okonomiyaki, and then this great yummy sauce that's on the top. And you serve it up and eat it off of these little paddles that they give you. So you can see here them preparing our food for us on the big teppanyaki. And then we had a hot plate at our table. You can sit there at the bar and they'll actually just slide your food right to you. But we had our own table here with our own hot plate with all of our food. And then you can see us here enjoying the Handori district. Handori is a really famous covered outdoor shopping arcade. It is enormous. It goes on for multiple city blocks, hundreds and hundreds of shops, a fun place to go out and walk around. So the next morning, we got up bright and early and took the ferry to Miyajima Island, which is a really popular destination in Japan. There is a public ferry that takes you there, or there are some privately operated ferries where you can get there. We took one of the private ones. As soon as you get off the ferry, you start seeing all of the wild deer that live on the island all over the place. But after a short walk, you come to what the island is most famous for, and that is its shrine with its giant floating torii that sits out on the water. The shrine as well is built out on piers out into the water. You can see just that really beautiful mountain backdrop, the shrine, really beautiful. More views of the torii. You can see there's boats. You can get on one of the boats and they'll row you out there. And the really long line of people who want to get their picture right in front of the torii, I did not stand in that. We did some shopping. There's lots of shops on the island. One of the things they're most known for is momiji manju. Manju is a popular dessert in Japan. It's like a little sponge cake with fillings in it. But the momiji manju is a type of manju in the shape of a Japanese maple leaf. And they have them at Miyajima and Hiroshima, specialty of that area. We decided to get these ones that were deep fried. It was kind of like funnel cake. They're filled with cream cheese. And I just love this little girl here. So from there, we took the ferry back to Hiroshima and visited the Peace Park, which this is probably the image most people think of when they think of Hiroshima. The atomic bomb dome. Of course, you've probably seen pictures like this here of the aftermath of the bomb, where it was one of the only buildings left standing. It was a cultural building at the time. It was designed by a Czech architect. They debated for years whether or not to tear it down and decided to put it up as a memorial. You can walk through the park. It's really beautiful. The one in the center there is the Flame of Peace, which they have said will keep burning until nuclear weapons have been eradicated. And then at the end of the plaza there is this shrine that has a view that's lined up perfectly with the dome. And of course, this was just a really moving place to visit and walk through. And then they light up the dome at night. So it's just really kind of eerie, but beautiful at the same time. So from Hiroshima, we got back on the bullet train and decided to make a brief little pit stop in Kyoto to visit one place. That was the place where we could capture this photo, which is probably one of the most iconic images of Kyoto. you Google Kyoto, you will probably see a picture that looks very much like this. And this is at the Fuji Inari Shrine, or the shrine with 1,000 torii. So all of these torii ascend up Mount Inari. You can walk all the way up and back down. And just the way the light comes through these is just really magical. And I loved this couple that was there taking a lot of pictures of themselves dressed up in their outfit. More pictures from the shrine complex. And so you will see all over the shrine these fox. You can see in that one there in front of the torii, there's the 2 fox kind of guarding it. And foxes are thought to be the messengers. That's why you'll see them all over the shrine. And then there in that box are ema, or prayer cards. And you will see these at the shrines and temples. You can purchase these and write your prayer on them, and then you hang them up and leave them behind. Each shrine, or a lot of the shrines, will have different ones with shapes that are associated with that shrine. So that's why these are in the shape of the torii. So outside, especially of the larger shrines and temples, you'll see a lot of shops, souvenir shops, and street food vendors. This one had an especially lot of street food vendors. So here's my niece here enjoying some freshly made gyoza. Looks really good, but I didn't have any. And that was our trip to Kyoto, brief, and we headed back to Yokosuka for the evening, and then went to Nagano. Nagano, you may recognize that name because it was the host of the 1998 Winter Olympics. This is where the Japanese Alps are located. And then, of course, it's home to the famous snow monkeys. So our first stop was Matsumoto Castle. Matsumoto Castle was built in 1595 AD, and it's one of 4 castles in Japan that's designated a national treasure. It is thought by many people to be the most beautiful castle in Japan, and part of that is because of its setting. I mean, you can see the Japanese Alps there in the background, this beautiful moat that goes around the castle, and then also that it's painted black. Most castles in Japan are white. So this one got the nickname of the Crow Castle because it was black, and I guess they wanted it to look more foreboding to possible invaders. So you can walk up to the top of the castle. It's 6 stories. We did do that. You can't take pictures inside. So this picture from the inside is when I got off the internet. But if you see those stairs there, more like a ladder. The steps are very far apart, and it kind of gets steeper the higher you go. We weren't sure if we were going to make it up to the very top, but we eventually made it. So I only recommend that if you are prepared for climbing ladders. But once you get up to the top, they do encourage you to take pictures out the windows of the views below, like this beautiful bridge. And they also have people dressed up as samurai out walking the grounds that you can interact with. Next stop was Ikokudani Snow Monkey Park. So to get into the park, it's about a mile hike in and out. It was fairly cold that day, a little drizzly, but overall it was a pretty pleasant walk in just a beautiful forested area you can see. And then all of a sudden, you start seeing the Sasquatch or the monkeys there. You can see him in there. And then everywhere there are monkeys. I have heard of people going and the monkeys not being down, but when we were there were hundreds of monkeys everywhere. And, you know, they give you rules not to get closer than 3 feet to the monkeys, not to feed them, all that. I don't think the monkeys know the rules because they'll walk right by you, although they don't really interact with the human guests. I didn't see any of them approach any of the human guests. They're just kind of doing their thing. They're ignoring the fact that you're there, but they will run right by you. More adorable monkeys. So cute. There were tons of babies there while we were there, and they were just the most adorable thing you've ever seen. I wanted to put one in my bag and take it home, but I couldn't. And of course, the images that people are familiar with, if you've seen this before, is the monkeys bathing in the onsen. It looks really pretty. You've probably seen the pictures when it's snowing of them out in the onsen. It wasn't terribly cold that day, so there weren't a lot of monkeys actually in the water, but a few of them were in the water. And when I saw the pictures before, I, for some reason, assumed that this was like this natural mountain hot spring where the monkeys came down. No, you can very obviously tell it's been built for them, but it didn't ruin the experience for me at all. And if you've ever wondered what this actually looks like, that's kind of what the other side of these views is, just endless cameras. It actually, we got there, we went first thing in the morning because they say the parking lot can get really full. So we wanted to be some of the first people in the park, make sure we got a parking spot and could get in. So just more monkeys. I could probably do a whole slideshow just on the monkeys. I had to leave out a lot of. Anyway, really fun. So from there, we headed back towards Tokyo. We made a few stops along the way. One of the places we stopped is this temple in Takasaki. This is probably somewhere you might not seek out if you were, on a short visit to Japan. But I thought it was interesting because Takasaki is thought to be where the Daruma dolls originated. Daruma are something, if you're in Japan, you'll see them all over in shops. I don't know what they are. So they're associated with Buddhism. When they're kind of a good luck charm. When you buy them, the eyes are blank. And then when you make your wish or your desire known to the Daruma for what you want, you fill in one eye. And if it comes true, then you fill in the other eye. And a lot of people keep them on display. Or at the end of the year, there will be a burning and you can take them, you can burn your Daruma, and then you would buy a new one and you would make a new wish or resolution or whatever you're looking for the next year to the Daruma. And supposedly the bigger the Daruma, the more likely your wishes. And then over here, I have bought a little fortune that is stuffed inside this Daruma. These are called omikuji. And you will see these at all of the shrines and temples hanging up. The tradition is if you get a bad fortune and you don't like your fortune, then you tie it up at the temple or the shrine. I actually don't know if my fortune was good or bad or not. I just wanted to tie it up. So. All right, so the Tokyo area. We did not spend a lot of time in Tokyo. I had been there on my previous visit a little bit, but we did make a couple stops. One of them, I was able to get this picture that you see here, and that was from the Tokyo Skytree. It's the tallest tower in the world. It's 2,080 feet tall. It's fairly new to the Tokyo skyline. I think it was built in 2011, but it really is a feat of engineering. You probably know the tallest building is in Dubai, but this is considered a tower. So it's the second tallest structure in the world, but the tallest tower. So it was really fun to go up on that and just, you get into these panoramic views of all of Tokyo. You can see as far as Mount Fuji. And then this picture up in the corner, obviously I did not take that, but that's to give you an idea of how high this looms over Tokyo. But fun to say we've been in the tallest tower in the world. Yes, and it's an incredibly fast elevator. In Japan, they really love they want the biggest, the tallest, the fastest. They don't do anything halfway. So we went to the Cup Noodles Museum in Yokohama. which if you go to the museum, you would think that cup noodles are the greatest invention since the telephone. I mean, they do love their cup noodles. Cup-o noodles is the anglicized version of it. In Japan, it's cup noodles. So there's an experience there where you can make your own custom cup noodles. So that's what I'm doing here. You get to design your own cup. And then you take it up to this assembly line and you give it to them. And then you get to select what ingredients you want in your custom cup noodles. And then it gets shrink wrapped. And then it spits out at the end on the conveyor, this little conveyor here where you can take it with you. Then you go and they have a station where you can put your cup in this clear plastic bag. And then you inflate it with a hand pump and tie a string to it. And then you can carry your cup noodles around. This was probably one of the funnest things that we did. The best way I can describe it is just Japanese, quirky and very Japanese. A lot of fun. And then here I am just hiding some cup noodles in their little cup. All right, so just a couple of things about, fun things about Japan, Japanese culture that I also wanted to throw in. And here we are, you can see headed into 7-Eleven. And if you don't know, there are convenience stores everywhere in Japan. If you thought we had a lot, we do not have a lot. 7-Eleven is the biggest one. Family Mart and Lawson are the other two. You can see these young ladies headed into the Family Mart in their kimono. So you can't make a visit to Japan and not go into a 7-Eleven and just find anything interesting to buy. So my sister insisted that I tried the corn dogs, which actually they were really good. They have a really thick batter on them, but the best thing is this little ketchup and mustard packet. You squeeze in half and you get this perfect little stream of ketchup and mustard to use as you eat your corn dog. I don't know why we don't have this. It's brilliant. And then this like corn Danish here, which corn is a really popular topping in Japan. Corn soup you'll find in a lot of the vending machines. Anyway, it sounds odd, but this was pretty good. All right, vending machine mania. Again, vending machines everywhere, probably more vending machines per capita than anywhere else. The fun thing about these drink vending machines is that they have cold items and hot items in the same machine. And I'm actually getting some corn soup out of that one. And then these machines here called gacha are like the little toys that you can get out of a machine, little 25-cent toys. But these are much bigger. And you'll see them all over Japan sitting outside of shops. There might be a few of them. But this is the whole store of gacha. There are hundreds of options in there. And it's just insane the number of different things that are in these little machines. Lots of fun. And then this is sort of a vending machine of sorts. This is us ordering ramen at a ramen restaurant by using this machine here. We're punching in what kind of ramen we want, and then a little ticket prints out, and you give that to the hostess, and she takes it to the kitchen. I guess we sort of have this with like touchscreen ordering, but it's not the same. And speaking of sushi or ramen, I wanted to mention a couple other things about the food and dining in Japan. Here we are doing a zashiki, the traditional tatami mat dining. So you go in, you'll take off your shoes like you would if you were entering someone's home in Japan. And then you get up on the platform and you sit at this low table to eat. We're all really uncomfortable here and trying to fake it. I don't know if we're doing a good job or not. I only recommend this if you have a really good back. So we only did this one time. Even my nieces said their legs were falling off while we were eating. So, but if you want a traditional dining experience in Japan, that is definitely it. And then outside in that same restaurant, is this window display, and you'll see these at restaurants. They're made out of wax or plastic, and it's models of everything that they serve inside the restaurant. You can see exactly what they're serving. I got the sense that these have gotten a little bit old-fashioned, but still pretty much every restaurant will have some sort of, if not one of these windows, some sort of menu posted outside. And then here we are doing yakiniku, which is like a Korean style barbecue, where you have a little charcoal barbecue right at your table. Really neat and things on. That was fun. Something about dining in Japan to remember is to keep your conversation low. Loud, rambunctious conversation in restaurants, outdoors, on the train is considered very rude in Japan. So something to keep in mind. Here's some of the fun food that I tried. Spaghetti Napolitan, that is ketchup spaghetti. I thought it was kind of cute. And then this little cabbage, shredded cabbage salad that you'll see on a lot of plates that they serve in Japan. Egg salad. I don't know why, but egg salad is incredibly popular in Japan. You'll see it everywhere. So have a tamago sando when you're in Japan. They're delicious. And then you can see some curry bread. That's a pastry that's been stuffed with Japanese curry. So good. Japan has a lot of really good pastries. I probably ate my weight in melon pan, but there are a lot of good ones. And then the Japanese souffle style pancakes, these really thick, eggy pancakes, really delicious. And then this other plate here is doria. And that's a dish that you can get at a restaurant called Caesarea, which is what they would call one of their family style restaurant chains. This one is Italian style. But what this is actually like a rice pilaf with pasta sauce and then bechamel and then the cheese on top and it's under the broiler. Sounds kind of odd. I actually thought this was pretty good. So, you don't necessarily have to have a really adventurous palate to try some interesting foods. That's actually, I think, one of the great things about Japan in general is that there is so much to see, do, experience that you can really craft a trip to your interest. If you're interested in history or feudal Japan or spirituality or anime and pop culture or food or any combination of those things, I think there's something interesting for everybody in Japan. And I recommend everybody take at least one trip there. All right. Are there any questions? Yeah. It is fairly easy to get around. So you probably know that most school children in Japan do study English, but don't expect that people are naturally going to start speaking English to you. They probably won't. At some of the larger, the more touristy places like hotels, the train station, the airport, they probably know English because it's part of their job requirements because they're dealing with tourists. A lot of like shop owners, shopkeepers, they're not going to speak English. So you can usually make your way around by lots of gesturing. You can kind of figure out maybe what they're trying to get you to do. If you keep hearing them say something that ends with kudasai, they're trying to give you a command. There's something you need to do that you're not doing. But I recommend, like anywhere, taking a little bit of a language before you go. It's helpful to know your greetings, which in Japan, there are different greetings based on the time of day. Please, thank you, that sort of thing. But for the most part, you don't need to be really versed in Japanese. Almost all of the signage now is in Japanese and English. So at the train station, you're going to see signs in English. And a lot of, you can go to restaurants and a lot of them will have an English menu that you can request. So definitely possible to get around Japan without a lot of Japanese. Yeah. There are no seat belts on the bullet train. I have to say, they are the smoothest, most comfortable trains I've ever been on. Incredibly smooth, but it is so fast that it is like being on a plane where your ears will pop as you go. But yeah, no, you don't have to wear a seatbelt. Any other questions? So, I mean, I can count to 10. I can say, arigato gozaimasu. Thank you very much. My family, we had Japanese exchange students that stayed with us every spring for about 6 or 7 years. And then, of course, my previous visit there. So I know just a little bit of Japanese. It does, yeah. And I'm not very good at it. You can look at it and think they're probably going to say it a certain way, but then you'll hear it and go, oh, that's not what I thought that word sounded like. They do. I'm not super familiar. They do have like a president, and then the structure of government. It's organized into what are called prefectures, which you can. And there's 47 prefectures in Japan. You can kind of compare those to states. I don't think they have like as many powers as our states here do, but each prefecture has its own governor. So it's kind of similar in that way. So I went into LAX, so that's a pretty quick flight. And then from LAX into Tokyo, it's about 12 hours. So it's a long flight. I looked out, I got them both overnights coming and going, which I think really helped with jet lag, especially be able to just sleep through the flight and kind of wake up again and it's daytime. So I think that really helped with my jet lag. You don't really, they're not going to wear it. That's not their everyday dress. So like I said, it's kind of like a fun thing for them to do now, for younger people to do now to get dressed up. There are actually places where you can go and rent kimono. My family had done that before in Kyoto. You can go and rent a kimono and cruise the town in your kimono. But you will see, if you go to the shrines, you do see older people who are going to visit the shrine and they've dressed up. I did not see many motorcycles. Mostly cars, and of course you've probably seen lots of little cars, little wagons. Really popular. Although I saw more and more luxury cars. Sports cars. Yeah. I don't know that I guess you can stop in Hawaii. I don't know. I think most people just go straight because out of LAX, there's a lot of flights. And there's 2 main airports in the Tokyo area. There's Haneda, which is where I flew into, and then there's Narita Airport. So there are a couple of different airports you can fly on, lots of airlines that fly in there. But I think most of them go straight. You connect somewhere in the West Coast, probably Portland, Seattle, or LA. Thank you. No, I just do it for fun. I will say, I mean, I just like taking a good camera with me when I travel. I have a mirrorless camera system, a micro four thirds camera. If you are traveling with a DSLR, a big DSLR, I recommend getting a mirrorless camera system. They're a lot lighter and smaller, and yet they can take. So that's what I do with it. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Tara. That was wonderful. I wanted to add, I had asked Dorothy to talk to you a minute, but she had to leave. Yusuf, who was our speaker a couple of weeks ago, he is from Turkey, of course, and he talked about Turkey. And she has talked to him, and his parents were able to get out of their house. His hometown was struck by the earthquake and was damaged heavily. And also Muhammad, who is actually Muhammad, and his parents were able to get out of their high rise, but it was collapsed, and so they have no home. And I believe that's probably true of Yusuf's family too. And they have had friends that have been lost. So I hope that all of you will keep them in your prayers, all of the Turkish people and the Syrian people. So thank you for coming, and I hope you'll come back next week. Wonderful to see everyone. Next week is going into Camino de Santiago in Spain, and it's Anitra Lavenhar going to go take us there. So come back next week.